PlayStation 1. In 1994, Sony did something no one expected. They crashed the console party and stole the spotlight. The original PlayStation wasn't just a product, it was a pivot point in gaming history. After a failed collaboration with Nintendo, Sony decided to go solo. What followed was a near-perfect launch in Japan and then globally. Developers were drawn to its CD-ROM format, cheaper and more spacious than cartridges, and Sony made licensing accessible, which brought in a flood of third-party support. Games like Ridge Racer and Battle Arena Toshinden set the tone early, but it was the launch's sheer confidence that hooked people. Sony didn't market this console as a toy. They aimed it at teens and young adults, positioning it as cool, edgy, and futuristic, and it worked. Stores sold out, developers lined up, and the public bought in hard. By the time the dust settled, the PlayStation had sold over 100 million units. For a first try, it was a masterclass. Sony didn't just launch a console, they launched the gaming empire. Nintendo Wii. When Nintendo launched the Wii in 2006, it entered the console race and changed the rules entirely. Instead of chasing graphical power like Sony or Microsoft, Nintendo went all in on innovation. The Wii Remote introduced motion controls that were accessible, intuitive, and downright fun. For the first time, you didn't need to be a gamer to enjoy a console. Grandma could bowl, dad could golf, and the kids could box, all with the flick of a wrist. The genius of the launch was Wii Sports, bundled with the system. It was an instant classic, simple, addictive, and perfect for showing off the system's strength. In its first holiday season, the Wii sold over 3 million units globally, and by the end of its life cycle, it had surpassed 100 million. Retailers couldn't keep it on the shelves, scalpers thrived, and Nintendo had struck gold with a strategy no one saw coming. The Wii was such a great launch, and it was an impactful cultural moment. It proved that sometimes, thinking different isn't risky, it's revolutionary. Xbox 360. The Xbox 360 launched in 2005 was Microsoft's redemption arc. After entering the console war with the original Xbox, they knew they had to come out swinging, and they did. Released a full year ahead of the PlayStation 3 and Nintendo Wii, the 360 had the next-gen stage all to itself. That head start was massive. Even with supply shortages, over 325,000 units sold in North America within 2 weeks, and demand kept growing. The launch lineup wasn't the deepest, but it was strategic. Call of Duty 2 and Perfect Dark Zero gave core gamers something to dive into, but the real gem was what came next, Xbox Live. Microsoft turned online multiplayer into the gold standard. Voice chat, digital game purchases, friend lists, it all began here. The 360 made online console gaming mainstream, and that foundation was set from day one. The Xbox 360 was the kind of console that laid the blueprint for the future of gaming. While Sony stumbled and Nintendo zigzagged, Microsoft sprinted out the gate, and it paid off. Nintendo DS. When the Nintendo DS launched in 2004, nobody knew what to make of it. 2 screens, a touchpad, a built-in microphone. It felt more like a tech experiment than a Game Boy successor. But Nintendo had a plan, and it worked. Despite the skepticism, the DS sold over 500,000 units in its first week in North America and quickly built momentum around the world. Why? Because it brought something new, gameplay innovation. Titles like Super Mario 64 DS, WarioWare Touched, and Feel the Magic showed off the system's unique capabilities, and Nintendo wasn't done. In the years that followed, they rebranded with the DS Lite, pushed casual-friendly titles like Brain Age and Nintendogs, and introduced online play with Mario Kart DS. Suddenly, everyone from kids to grandparents was picking up a stylus. By the end of its run, the DS sold over 154 million units, making it the best-selling handheld of all time. And it all started with a launch that leaned into weirdness, bet on creativity, and cracked open a massive new market. I'll be posting here daily, so if you've liked the video so far, go ahead and drop a like and subscribe to see new videos. Now here's the next console. Game Boy Advance. When the Game Boy Advance launched in 2001, it was more than just a follow-up console. It was Nintendo's handheld evolution. After dominating the 90s with the original Game Boy and Game Boy Color, the Advance felt like a leap into the future. It had a horizontal layout, a vibrant 32-bit color screen, and enough power to run near SNES quality games in your pocket. Day one titles like Super Mario Advance, F-Zero Maximum Velocity, and Castlevania Circle of the Moon delivered serious variety right out the gate. What made the launch even better was backward compatibility. Players could still use their old Game Boy and Game Boy Color cartridges, making the transition painless. The GBA quickly became the go-to system for both longtime fans and new handheld gamers. Nintendo had a strategy, appealed to nostalgia while pushing portable gaming forward, and it couldn't have worked out better for them. The first year saw millions of units sold worldwide, and the system only got stronger with the release of the GBA SP and Game Boy Micro. Developers flocked to it, the library exploded, and fans never looked back. The GBA's launch reinforced Nintendo's dominance in a space they already owned. PlayStation 2. The PlayStation 2 launch took off in March 2000, where Japan saw over 600,000 units sell first week. By the time it hit North America later that year, hype had reached nuclear levels. Fans lined up for hours, pre-orders vanished in minutes, and Sony delivered. Sure, the launch lineup was a bit light. Ridge Racer 5 and Tekken Tag Tournament were the big standouts, but the real magic wasn't just in the games, it was in the promise. The PS2 was a great gaming console, but it was also a DVD player, at a time when standalone DVD players still cost hundreds of dollars. That feature alone turned the PS2 into a Trojan horse. Suddenly, non-gamers were buying it just to watch movies. Developers, meanwhile, were flooding in thanks to Sony's accessible architecture and massive install base. Within 5 days in the US, over 500,000 consoles were sold. And by the end of its life cycle, the PS2 would become the best-selling console of all time, with more than 155 million units moved. But none of that would have happened without a flawless opening move. The PS2 launch wasn't flashy. It was strategic, calculated, and executed with near-perfect timing. Sony was on top of the world. Nintendo GameCube. Nintendo's GameCube launch in late 2001 was compact, colorful, and surprisingly efficient. After the more experimental N64 era, Nintendo pivoted back towards the basics. A simple, cube-shaped console focused entirely on games. No DVD playback, no multimedia distractions, just performance and fun. And while the GameCube would eventually be outsold by its competitors, its launch was no slouch. In Japan, the system sold nearly 300,000 units within its first 3 days. In North America, Nintendo moved 100 million worth of hardware and software in just the opening weekend. Launch titles like Luigi's Mansion, Wave Race Blue Storm, and Star Wars Rogue Squadron 2 delivered polished, console-defining experiences right out the gate. Luigi's Mansion especially turned heads. It may not have starred Mario, but it showed Nintendo wasn't afraid to shake things up. The GameCube also came in multiple colors at launch, including the now iconic indigo. Its compact discs were a bold departure from industry trends, and the controller design, still praised today, was perfection. Despite tough competition, the GameCube's launch proved that Nintendo could still generate massive buzz and move serious hardware. It wasn't just a strong start, it was a statement of intent from a company still full of surprises. Nintendo Switch. When Nintendo launched the Switch in March 2017, it was coming off the disastrous Wii U. Expectations were cautious, but Nintendo delivered one of the greatest comebacks in gaming history. The hybrid design, part home console, part handheld, felt like the future. You could dock it, detach it, or take it anywhere, and the messaging was crystal clear. No gimmicks, just freedom to play however you want it. The launch lineup centered around The Legend of Zelda: Breath of the Wild, a game that carried the system. Critics and fans hailed it as a masterpiece, and it immediately justified buying the hardware. Within a month, Nintendo sold 2.74 million units, nearly matching Wii U's entire launch year. By year's end, they hit 15 million. The Switch was so hot, retailers couldn't keep up with demand for months. The console's modular Joy-Con controllers, instant sleep resume feature, and seamless switching between docked and portable modes made it feel revolutionary. The Switch launch didn't rely on flashy power. It offered versatility and fun. And Nintendo didn't just recover from the Wii U, they skyrocketed past it. This was the blueprint for how to win back an entire generation. Sega Dreamcast. On September 9th, 1999, ironically enough, 9/9/99, Sega launched the Dreamcast in North America, and for a brief moment, it looked like Sega had pulled off the perfect comeback. After the rocky Saturn era, Sega returned with something bold, sleek, and ahead of its time. The Dreamcast launched with a solid lineup of 19 games, including Sonic Adventure, Soul Calibur, NFL 2K, and Power Stone. These weren't filler titles. They were polished, high energy, and showed off the system's graphical leap over its rivals. What made the Dreamcast launch exceptional wasn't just the games, it was the forward-thinking design. It had a built-in modem for online play, an intuitive UI, a visual memory unit that added gameplay functionality, and graphics that looked next-gen in 1999. Sega priced it aggressively at $199, and by the end of its first 2 weeks, the Dreamcast sold over 500,000 units in the US, generating more than 98 million. Critics and fans alike praised it. For a few glorious months, it felt like Sega was back on top. While history remembers its short lifespan, the launch itself remains legendary. Fast, focused, and genuinely exciting. In hindsight, the Dreamcast didn't fail because of its launch. It succeeded despite everything that came after. Nintendo Switch 2. In 2025, Nintendo did it again. The launch of the Switch 2 wasn't just a sequel, it was a full-on victory lap. After the wild success of the original Switch, expectations were sky high, and somehow, Nintendo exceeded them. Within just 4 days, the Switch 2 sold 3.5 million units globally, making it the fastest selling console in Nintendo's history, and possibly the fastest in the entire industry. By the end of its first month, sales had soared to 5.82 million. The hardware upgrade hit the sweet spot: better performance, OLED visuals, improved Joy-Con durability, and even a performance boost dock. But the real magic came from the software lineup. Mario Kart World, Donkey Kong Bonanza, and Metroid Prime 4 were launch day hits. Pair that with backwards compatibility and seamless cloud saves, the Nintendo had crafted the perfect bridge between generations. Retailers couldn't keep it on shelves, reviews were glowing, and investors were thrilled. Nintendo's revenue surged 132% year over year. Unlike the Wii U stumble, the Switch 2 showed what a confident, experienced Nintendo looks like at full power. It was a hit in momentum, timing, and delivering exactly what players wanted. What's your favorite console? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching.